Welcome everyone. My name is Jens Hoffmann. I'm the director of the Waters Institute here at the California College of the Arts, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Jan Verwoert. Jan Verwoert is a Berlin-based writer, critic, and occasional curator. And his writing has appeared widely in a number of art magazines such as Frieze, After All, Metropolis, and Springerin. As a curator, Verwoert organized the Medley of Writing, a project on text and speculative imagination at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Barcelona, and co-curated Yes, No, and Other Options for Art for Sheffield 08. He was a member of the advisory board of the Munich Kunstverein, where he also curated the exhibition Some Neighbors in 2008. Verwoert teaches at the Piet Zwarte Institute in Rotterdam, where he, since 2005, has been the tutor of a course entitled Imagined Communities. He's also been a guest professor at the Royal College of Art in London, at the Academy of Umeå in Sweden, and currently teaching at the Apple in Amsterdam. He's the author of Bastian Ader, In Search of the Miraculous, published in 2006 by After All, MIT Press. And most recently, he published a selection of his writings under the title Tell Me What You Want, What You Really, Really Want, published by Sternberg Press. Jan is here to take part in Paulina Orlovka's magnificent Stavern contribution, a series of programs and projects, exhibitions that we are organizing at the Waters. And over the course of the next few months, Paulina, Jan, and other guests will come to San Francisco to work with a class of CCA students to create a project around the idea of self-portraiture that will include music, costumes, posters, performances for what eventually will be called a ball of muses that will be staged at the end of the semester. So please join me in welcoming Jan Verwoert.
Hey, good evening, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. When I got through customs in the morning, the guy was saying, like, so what are you going to talk about? And I said, inspiration and muses. So in response to Paulina's idea of the ball of muses, and I guess also in continuation of certain conversations that we have had in the past, I today want to talk about inspiration and its pitfalls, and what it means to share inspiration, and what forms of community gathering can emerge from the rituals that allow us to share inspiration. So basically, the first two parts of the talk will be about the simple question, like first part, what happens when we get inspired? When there's this kind of strange moment of intuition or celestial input, when you receive some kind of calling or some kind of urge awakens. So what happens in that moment? And the second question will be like, how do we then share it? Being saintly inspired by whatever we received in the night. So these strange artistic congregations where everybody brings their work, a couple of arrows, a book, and whatever you're currently obsessed by. How do we share it? How do we want to share its inspiration? And really, what kind of social space opens up in that moment when inspiration somehow fills the space? It's a particular beautiful painting by Bellini. It's a motif called Sacra Conversazione, sacred conversation. And I'm just thinking that maybe we're always involved in these sacred conversations, and it might be worth taking a good look at the form that they can potentially take and the implications that that might have, and what it means to then share those conversations with a wider public, as you can see here. But when I think about inspiration, I think about it less in a kind of Neoplatonic way as some kind of idea that it suddenly appears to you and that then demands to be executed. I think about it more in a pneumatic way. So pneuma is the spirit, but as we know, pneumatic is like a force, a dynamic, something that, a kinetic energy that drives you to do certain things, as we can see here in this beautiful painting by Paulina Orlowska, where we see a very inspired peacock who just received his brief. As you can read in the feathers, it said, "Get on the fucking block and fuck." I mean, that's when I talk about inspiration, I think about it on that pneumatic, kinetic level, as a particular force that which then inspires you or motivates you to spread your wings and display your vanity. Like also, we see this kinetic moment here in this wonderful Annunciation scene by Lorenzo Lotto, where you feel the energies flowing through that space. Now God says, "Hey," the angel goes, "Ho," the cat goes, "Meow," and Mary is kind of unsure how to respond to it, but she's surely moved, as you can see. No? A subject that I want to then address in the third part of this talk is the thing. Because when we are inspired, that usually does not just drive us to manifest and proliferate, but there is usually also things that make an appearance on the scene of inspiration. As you can see here in this beautiful painting by Carlo Crivelli, there's this gherkin appearing, right? And there's a little bit of like some kind of pumpkin action going on in the background, but it's just, we know that, no, when the pneumatic force hits you, suddenly strange objects start appearing. So all these exchanges that we have as we share our inspirations, they usually are accompanied by objects changing hands. In Berlin, I have a 76-year-old neighbor who survived 2 husbands in various political regimes, and I have a very inspired conversation with her. I take down her trash, and she gives me cheap schnapps, eggs, and nectarines. So I'm just thinking in those moments when certain communicative forms of exchange build their own kind of institution. Usually, these deals are marked by objects changing hands. Maybe it's a gherkin. I guess any art historian will tell you that it's a symbol of fertility, but I recently learned that talking about fertility, you see those 2 rabbits making out in the background. It's a traditional motif that appears in the moment of inspiration or intellectual inspiration particularly, because in the Bible it says, you know, when you get the message, you're inspired, go proliferate. And this idea of circulation, distribution, proliferation acquires a particular sexual dimension here, because as we know, rabbits proliferate like crazy. So the whole idea, the media, the question of the medium, like how do we proliferate the message, if we relate that to a very material logic, we end up with these kind of strange objects changing hands and rabbits mating in the background. So in like first part of the talk, we'll be addressing the question, what happens in the moment of inspiration? Second part is like, how do we share inspiration? How do we want to share it? And what are the social models that we find in the history of our culture that describe how inspiration is shared? And the last question, what about the thing? What about the animal? Interestingly, talking about congregation and things emerging, there's an essay by Heidegger that gets quoted from time to time, which is called The Thing. Heidegger's etymologies are notoriously dodgy, but this one, maybe we can believe that actually thing comes from the Germanic origin ting, and a ting is a congregation. So when in the old Viking days, when people got together to grunt at each other and come up with a political decision, that would be a ting. So that there is actually something in the logic of the thing, the appearance of the thing, which is quintessentially social. So it's no coincidence that things appear when social processes are set in motion through inspiration, whether it's gherkin, schnapps, or rabbits in action. It's something that we have to consider because it seems to be part and parcel of the logic of how inspiration is shared and then in a pneumatic way sets things in motion. Okay, I want to alert you to a couple of pitfalls of inspiration, things that are notoriously difficult when it comes to inspiration, even though inspiration is a force that hits you, a physical force of things emerging. What exactly is emerging in the moment of inspiration is notoriously difficult to identify. In the moment of inspiration, there is usually a lot going on, and Iron Maiden actually beautifully describe that moment of confusion when they sing, "How can I be sure that what I saw last night was real and not just fantasy?" I mean, that is the drama of inspiration. You know, like, are you sure on the day after that you got the message right, or that it was even for real, that you had that that strange moment of intuition? The drama of intuition is that intuitions are vivid, but usually very difficult to verify. I mean, that's why we're writing, that's why we're making work, is to verify those strange, vivid intuitions. But of course, as you try to verify them, you can never be entirely sure that what you saw last night was real and not just fantasy, or whether you even read the message right, no? I mean, you can be totally perfectly sure that you received a message from the Lord, but that still doesn't ensure that you know how to interpret it, no? I mean, Lord, what ass? Come on, and which ass are you talking? Maybe you're bringing the wrong ass, and in the end it's all your fault. Or for instance, with St. Francis, I mean, the guy got the message he should be kind of spreading the gospel to the birds. Maybe he misheard the Lord, and it was not birds but words. You should spread the words, Francis, not birds. You never know. You could be totally wrong. This is a particularly disastrous case. It's Saint Ursula. Saint Ursula was about to get married, and then on the night before her marriage, there was this angel dropped by and said, like, Ursula, you shouldn't get married. Instead, you should get yourself 1,000 virgins and take them on a trip through Europe. Ursula said, yep, piece of cake, got herself 1,000 virgins and took them on a trip to Europe, came back to close where I'm from, an area in Cologne, where the citizens of Cologne objected to the fact that the virgins should remain virgins. The virgins objected to the objections, everybody got killed. And in the end, that might have been just one big misunderstanding. No? But imagine the enormous energy that it takes to take 1,000 virgins through Europe. No, like, you cannot deny the kinetic force of inspiration, but who knows, maybe she misunderstood the brief. I went through a school dedicated to St. Ursula. It was a Catholic school, and I mean, look what I learned. All this stuff. I mean, usually saints have an answer when they're asked why they're doing what they're doing. They receive their legitimation from heaven because they receive their stigmata. So even if they kind of might be slightly misguided about the message that they receive, usually they have kind of official confirmation that they're asked to act in the name of the Lord because they receive stigmata, as St. Francis does here. I mean, that is a problem that we have today, that we very rarely receive those stigmata. Right, so not only can we never be sure that we receive the brief right, but there is very little possibilities to prove that you really received that calling as an artist or as a writer, which, I mean, Lacan in one of his seminars raises this question, that he says, like, the biggest question is, and that will forever haunt us, whether we are not all complete impostors. So since we cannot validate our calling, we have to just rely on the fact that this unverifiable calling might be for real. And who knows? We might be faking it all the time. No, we can't prove it. I mean, no one ever asked me to be a writer. No, I mean, like, really, like, you start pretending that you are, and then you get invitations to San Francisco. Yeah? A particular case of someone who arguably was faking it, but was of big inspiration to many people was this guy here on the left called the Piano Man, who appeared on a beach in Britain one day, looking very cute in a soggy suit and doing what usually is very good for an artistic career. That he talked very little, but he seemed like very haunted and inspired and traumatized, and he kept insinuating that he wanted to be shown to a piano that was done, and then he started tinkling a little bit on the piano, just very exquisitely little. And people loved it. Perfect artist, no? Like he seemed like really heaven sent. It showed all the stigmata of a Lohengrin type of person, lost his memory, appears on the beach, fantastic. Unfortunately, it turned out that he was from Bavaria and just needed a little bit of attention. No? But it, I'm not trying to just mock it and ridicule it, because I believe that if there's one thing to the drama of inspiration which we really should take seriously, is precisely that moment of insecurity. That while the force is there that drives you to undertake this incredible project to get out in your best dinner suit on a beach in Brighton. I mean, it's quite an effort. The question whether we are imposters, whether we are for real or not, seems to be traditionally connected to the very motif of inspiration. Some of the most inspired people are usually recognized by the fact that they're perpetually in doubt, like Jesus, for instance. No, he would, like that's the one of the marks of the prophet, that the prophet will doubt whether his calling is for real or not. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert contemplating whether it was him, really him, and it's a problem that we all know. No, it's one disposition that we all share if we are sufficiently inspired. We constantly haunted by this question: could it be us? There's a beautiful painting by Lucy Mackenzie here. This drama of not knowing whether this future that seems to be foreshadowed is something that you can live up to or not. Jeanne d'Arc had the same problem. She was hearing all those voices in the garden say, "Save France, save France." And she said, yeah, okay, I'm in a state of grace, I'm going to save France, and then she got burned at the stake because people denied that she actually had that vocation. And Jesus also had different people visit him in the desert and giving him different advice. Like anybody studying art knows that drama. You know, you're in doubt, and then you have all those tutors dropping by and giving you advice. So usually one says, like, make it more conceptual. The other says, no, make it more physical, make it... And I mean, like, we know that drama, no? Like God, the devil says, come on, like, let's have some drinks, and Jesus goes, no, I've got some important project coming up, I can't go out tonight. It's like, I think we're intimately familiar with this drama of inspiration. You're in doubt, and you hear all those conflicting voices, and it's not just like a historical phenomenon. It is essentially a motif with which our entire culture currently seems to be absolutely obsessed. We're not the only ones suffering from this kind of strange neurotic disposition. Yeah? Like all the biggest blockbusters are sold on the basis of precisely that motif, the idea of the chosen one. And I'm not even talking about American Idol and America's Next Top Model. No, the drama of choice, determining who the chosen one is, right now is one of the strongest motifs that entire societies identify with. So strangely, in that moment of neurotic solitude in the studio, we touch on something that quite, at the moment, is at the heart of the psychology that propels our competitive society. No, we are not the only ones. In our solitude, we are at the heart of a social problem. No? The question of the foreshadowed future, the choice of the chosen one, the drama of the choice of the chosen one. It's not just the art market, it's the Matrix, it's Harry Potter, and it's Microsoft. No? Your potential, our passion, we see tomorrow's inventors. So this is not just about the curatorial choice, this is a general phantasmagoria which currently obsesses our culture. So by speaking about inspiration, we are actually at the heart of the political mechanisms that currently pump energy into our culture. So, and I'm just thinking there must be a way of reappropriating this discourse. We know what this feels like. There's a history of that. Our society is obsessed with it. Can we not seize it? Can we not reclaim it? And the question, of course, is in what key? And obviously humor, I believe, is a good key. But I think also there is something about the hubris of reclaiming this discourse, to saying like, yes, I am inspired, I am Faint Girl. Amazing piece by Janice Kerbel on the right. She did on the left. She did a whole series advertising, promoting bionic women, like bionic, who have incredible talents, incredible potentials. This is Faint Girl, who can faint at will. There are like other women who can explode and radiate, and they are advertised in a vaudeville fashion. But I think this is a way of both seriously and humorously reclaiming the discourse of this drama of potential. Same on the left is Francis Stark, and I playing this drama of revealing, concealing the secret that makes you special. In that moment, the secret that's being revealed and concealed is a pair of yoga pants. It's not exactly Victoria's secret, but something more profane. Interestingly, when we think about those days of doubt, there is a mystical formula for it, which we find here. This is a beautiful intarsia by Lorenzo Lotto again. It's not a coincidence that the 10 circles in the middle are in Kabbalah terms are the 10 sephirots that are Agamben calls them the 10 passions of being. These are the 10 ways in which God manifests itself, and through which being manifests itself. And interestingly, there's 40 flames around it, and those 40 flames stand for the time of becoming. So prophets usually spend 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, and depending on the calendar you use, pregnancy lasts for 40 weeks, right? So there is this formula, there is a long mystical tradition of, in a way, trying to come to terms with what it means to transform, to create. And for instance, there's the formula of the 40 days. But okay, usually the prophets spend those 40 days and 40 nights alone in the desert. But what if you're not alone? What if you are at an art school and everybody around you is similarly inspired and is equally harboring the secret of his divine potential? It's a terrible experience. No, it stopped me from making art. I was always a very promising artist as long as I didn't make any work and lived in a small town. It's usually the thing that you learn to cultivate, know how to show your potential without actually doing anything. In terms of fashion sensitivity, it can take you a long way. But then there's this disastrous moment when you're forced to share a space with people who insist on spending those 40 days and 40 nights with you. And then, of course, you are in a situation of absolutely deathmatch competition. No? How can you possibly share a space with people who lay claim to the same potential to be absolutely singular? I mean, this town is not big enough for two of us, let alone, I don't know, how many students are here, 2,000? Like, how is that even possible? No? And on the one hand, there is a certain absurdity to it, but at the same time, I think it touches on something very deep, namely the question that how we could potentially share that inspiration, that promise, that feeling of potential. How can we share our singularity when the only basis on which we come together in a place like this is the suspicion that we all might be singular? I mean, the way how capitalist society solves that problem is that the chosen one gets chosen through competition. But I'm kind of thinking there must be better ways to, in a way, co-inhabit this space of singularity than the deathmatch competition, which in the end determines the choice of the chosen one. But I mean, it's a paradox, no? How can you share a space with people who share that one feeling with you, that they're absolutely singular? Derrida writes about that beautifully in The Politics of Friendship, and he goes back to Nietzsche and Nietzsche's concept of the community of the jealous lovers of solitude, who come together to share this one thing, which is their love of solitude. And it's possible, no? Like, why should a social order only be premised on kind of unification or a communion, that a moment of sharing that unifies you? Why shouldn't it be possible to share difference, or share radical difference, or share that feeling of a promise of being radically different, when a social order would not be about congregation but disaggregation as a social logic that still can define a space of conviviality? And I'm trying to think that these spaces have always existed. The spaces of culture have always also been the spaces of politics and the spaces of intrigue, as you can see in this Mantegna painting. Like, you see a lot of backdoor politics happening there, no? And we know what that's like, no? Like, there's like no limit to the amount of gossip that can be spread in the arts. It's not necessarily a convivial space, but these spaces of intrigue and suspicion have a long history. And even if you look at Bellini's Angels here, they seem also slightly paranoid and suspicious. Now, who's that guy? Have you seen him around? Should we call campus security? It happens, no? But at the same time, there is a positive tradition of sharing inspiration. For instance, the very origin of bourgeois culture, and in here I mean bourgeois not in a negative sense, no, like the emergence of the middle classes, the emergence of those spaces where people got together to read to each other, to look at art together, to play music together. In short, like all those spaces that we still somehow inhabit, including tonight. That we somehow get together in evening societies, well, first of all, to inspire each other, or in a way to feel and experience what this inspiration could be, or you could also say, on a more cynical note, to work ourselves in that frenzy that there is actually something like art that would be seriously inspiring. The beautiful thing about these evening societies was that in the beginning people didn't really know what to do. No, before it was the privilege of people in the academy to get together and look at art. And with this newly emergent middle class, people first of all had to find manuals, or protocols, or practical ways of understanding what it could mean to enjoy art together. And so a lot of beautiful aesthetic theory of the 18th century is this completely maverick thing where aesthetic thinkers are trying to explain what happens in those moments and how we should handle it. So this is not necessarily a stable space. It might be a slightly hysterical space, but where people work themselves into a situation where they experience passion. But it's a tradition that we inhabit, the tradition of kind of co-inspiration, where the energy is not just shared, but maybe also communally generated. And it is traditionally also the space of the muses, as we can see here. And the space of the muses can be a pretty messy space. As you can see here, there's a lot going on, and we can't even be sure that they're all playing the same tune. No, it could also be a space of radical difference. Just imagine each of them is playing a different song and you get a complete cacophonia, but evidently there's a lot of intensity going on here. And in a way, that space of the muses coming together to generate energy, well, is the space of amusement and bemusement, but it is traditionally also the space of the museum. So, like, what is the museum if not a space of mutual amusement and bemusement, where you kind of get together to bemuse each other? That's a piece by Paulina called Museum. It's very funny. It's fantastic. It's just like this neon sign saying museum, and then there's a sound piece where she just reads the words, the word museum, as if she kind of was reading it for the first time. So it goes like museum, museum. Museum. And it just puts you back into this situation of not actually knowing what a museum is. And I would provocatively add that maybe a museum is this kind of messy situation of mutual bemusement, where you activate each other through bemusing each other in a somewhat chaotic way. A space that is intimately, that's a museum, like the gathering of the muses, that is intimately related to the museum is the academia, because when the muses get together to hustle and play, in the academia, people got together to meet Socrates and discuss. Interestingly, the academia is often represented as a space when initially the academia was just a park. It's called academia because there was a guy called Academus who bought a bit of land outside Athens and said, like, okay, anyone who wants to meet can go there. And Socrates was hanging out there, and you could meet him and talk. So in a way, I'm trying to bring these motifs in to say that these traditional sites on which we meet to inspire or bemuse each other are not necessarily sites that are governed by particular protocols. On the contrary, the original academia or the academy was just an open site where you could walk around and have a conversation, a kind of a non-institution institution, a place that is intimately related to this strange park. Academia is the Stoa. And I always thought that the Stoa was just this philosophical school, and then I met Nikos Papastagiadis, who's a philosopher from Australia, who explained to me the obvious, that the Stoa is not just a school, the Stoa is a place. The Stoa is the colonnades that surround the marketplace, as you can see there. So interestingly, it is a place for convivial philosophizing, which follows a particular logic. Like the park, it is not really governed by the normal rules of the city. As you can see here, the Stoa lies in between two spaces. It's outside the house, but it's not the market. So it neither follows the rule of the oikos, the house, which the rules of the oikos are the oikonomia, the economy, nor does it follow the rules of the agora, the rules of politics. No, it's an in-between space, a threshold space, which somehow partakes in both the economia of the oikos and the politics of the agora, but is just a threshold in between. And I'm trying to think that if we search for the origins of the spaces that we could inhabit when we share inspirations, very often there are these strange threshold spaces where people get together to talk, to inspire each other, without necessarily being instructed by a given protocol. The Stoics had this practice of peripatetic walking, that while you were having a conversation, you would walk through those colonnades without necessarily following a given path. So the inquiring spirit of your conversation would be paralleled by the aimless walking in the Stoa. So what I'm actually trying to do here is make a plea for spaces like the Academia to be a little bit more of a Stoa, or to maybe in a way reinvigorate the original chaotic spaces of bemusement that the salons that are at the origin of the culture that we inherit tonight might have been. And if I understand Paulina's idea of the ball of muses right, I think it's somewhere along those lines. No? The question, can we not reappropriate the spaces of our gathering as spaces of difference, but also as spaces of bemusement and amusement and peripatetic thinking without given protocols? Okay, more Stoa. Right. Something that Jean-Luc Nancy writes about when he writes about the muses is a concept of material difference. And I find that really thrilling. He says that the muses, first of all, are different. No, they represent the different arts, but not only do they represent the materiality of those different arts. As you can see, they all have a different instrument. They actually, in a way, embody the materiality of difference, so that the space of the muses is a materially perceptible space of difference. You could easily imagine them all play different tunes, and then you would understand what it means to sensually experience the materiality of difference. So basically, Nancy argues for a philosophy of art where actually the spirit in which we come together to enjoy those is to experience not just difference in the form of cultural difference, but difference in the form of material difference, the sheer materiality of difference. And I find Bellini's Sacra Conversazione particularly interesting in that sense, because you can see that in a strange way they're all doing their own thing, like fiddling away, reading. I don't know. She brings like a feather or a palm branch, and so in a way they all have their material thing that they're doing, but in a strange way they seem to be co-inhabiting this space without there being necessarily one contract or one ideology that binds them. So in a way I get the feeling that they might be co-inhabiting this space on the level of enjoying the materiality of difference. And when we think about that materiality of difference, it's not just the material difference between different products, but it's also the difference between different media, as you can see here in this pizza ad found in New Zealand, in Wellington. And I think those pizza boys totally figured out the materialism of the medium. But not just in a kind of straightforward modernist sense that, I don't know, understanding the materiality of the medium is about, I don't know, painting flat paint on canvas, but that there is a material logic to this kind of input-output dynamic. What goes in goes out. And on a certain level, it makes a difference whether you have the pizza on the monitor or on the plate, but on another level it doesn't, because it's one material operation. It's proliferation, really. You proliferate the news that, oh, there shall be pizza. And thinking about inspiration or intuition, intuition is, yes, it's what you put into the oven, but as you can see here, is also about what comes out. There is something about the logic of the medium, where virtuality and materiality overlap in this kind of strange input-output dynamic through which the pizza gets shared. And I'm trying to think that I still have to fully wrap my head around it, but there is a structural similarity between the use of the instruments, the production of the virtual sound, and the material use of the medium, that it somehow overlaps in the same way how these two geniuses have figured it out. And I remember once being in a tourist trap in Mexico City where there were about, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 mariachi bands playing at the very same time. And you would have thought that it must have been a space that was impossible to be in. No, but on the contrary, it was totally possible, because there was some kind of, the whole place was charged by a kind of strange kinetic energy of these happening in different parts of the space. That on the one hand, there was a lot of interference, and there was definitely not one song, but a cacophonia in a way. But that cacophonia in itself had a particular sound, and I think that would be another ideal for that space, where these different things are happening, but the materiality of their difference does have a sound in itself, or a kind of a strange illogical logic, a logic of communality that is based not on aggregation but on disaggregation. You stand together, standing apart, like those girls do in Derek Jarman's Jubilee. This is one of my favorite paintings by the German painter Lukas Duvenhöger, where we do find a collective sharing that moment of inspiration, but similar to the Bellini. Do I have a Bellini? Ah, damn, no, I have. But they share it in silence. That's another thing. Very often inspiration needs no protocol, but it can be experienced in a moment of silence. And Derrida also writes about that, going back to Nietzsche, that maybe the community of the jealous lovers of solitude needs no manifesto, needs no ideology. It just knows how to share a certain moment of silence. Of course, that moment of silence can be a very contemplative moment, but radical material difference, of course, can also be actualized in action. And some of these academies can be incredibly action-packed. As you can see there's another notion of an ideal academy. And I think it's no coincidence that we find these models of alternative academies in the 1970s, like Police Academy or the Muppet Show, which I believe are attempts to somehow visualize or think through the process of what it could mean that very different creatures inhabit that space of difference together in a manner that doesn't arrest them in competition, but produces a highly active machinery, really, a machinery that constantly, like Deleuze and Guattari would probably call it a war machinery, a machine that thrives on constantly short-circuiting itself. Here, that's the fantastic panel that the Muppet Show keep putting on questions of lasting importance. it usually ends in terrible incongruences, as you can see here. But it's an attempt, and I think a visionary model of how we could inhabit a space of material difference that I think is well worth reconsidering. So now we come to the final bit after the moment of inspiration and its pitfalls, the different models of sharing inspiration that we can find, to the thing and the animal, and the pneumatic dimension that kind of, in a way, flows through them. It is interesting that when we look at the iconography of the Muses, there is another scene that reappears, and especially if we have the Muppet Show in the back of our heads, which is in the moment when Orpheus plays to the animals, the stones, and the trees. Like Orpheus is actually the son of, we get this right, the son of Apollo and Calliope. Calliope is the muse responsible for mathematics, string instruments, and philosophy, I think. Yeah? So he's pretty good at the fiddle. And the thing is that he's so capable of touching people with his song that he, in a way, short-circuits the ontological order itself. So when Orpheus plays, it's not only creatures that come and assemble, but it's stones and trees that come too. So what we have here is material difference in the most radical manner, namely is ontological difference, which Orpheus bridges by creating this kind of congregation of entities that, in a way, defies the separation of the ontological order. It really is a crazy Muppet Show, and it includes stones and trees. I remember a friend of mine told me once that she was at school and she had to do a play, be part of a play, and the problem was there were not enough roles left for all the children to play, so she had to play a stone. It was terribly difficult, no? Like how to assume your place in the ontological order. Orpheus is not really considered with it, no? He creates that space of conviviality, which is at the same time a space of radical material difference. And a strange moment of collectivity where I've recently been introduced a little bit to the philosophy of juju. I can't really pretend that I understand it. But the interesting thing about juju magic is that there is like this animist logic of how the thing relates to the creature. For instance, a particular instrument can talk to a devil or an animal precisely because that instrument is the devil and the animal. So there is a logic of correspondence, and in his latest book on signatures, Agamben writes a lot about that. But the idea that to be touched by something means that there's a situation of mimesis where the spirit of that which is outside is actually the spirit of that which is inside. So that the collectivity without, the devils in the space, are actually the devils within. So that is actually something that we could understand Orpheus as affecting here. Not only does he play to all those creature stones and trees, but they are in his instrument. So that it is visualized in a different way in this beautiful collage by Francis Stark, where you see the peacock return, the vain artist, but the writer writing. But as you write, I think every artist, every writer speaks to the devils without, through the devils within. Like I think any individual who can speak to a collective, in a way, has that collective within, so that the polyphony of the voices that enable one voice to speak is the basis for addressing a collective. So that if we address inspiration on that level, of that animistic, magical level, we would be even forced to reconsider our ideas of what it means that one individual addresses a group. More research into magic. And the question of what it means to be haunted by the devils within, and to what degree inspiration is, in fact, a form of haunting, where what you put out might just be a response, or it might very well be a response to all the devils that inhabit you, where in the end it's not even quite sure who's been possessed by whom. Do you possess your devils, or are you possessed by them? This is, I think, a question which this piece by Paulina Orlowska raises, which she showed on the Berlin Biennial before the last, where she in a way slipped into the body of the Polish painter Strzelinska, or allowed Strzelinska to slip into her body to create this entirely ambiguous space of inspiration, where she presented her own black and white copies of Strzelinska's strange modernist folkloristic paintings side by side with the original. And I believe it created a kind of strangely eerie feeling where you didn't really know who was the host and who was the hosted, like which spirit, if Strzelinska was hosted by Orlowska or Orlowska was hosting Strzelinska. And I think this is like this kind of magical space of inspiration where the differences between the inside and the outside, one and the other, can potentially be made to blur. That's Orpheus again. It's interesting that you got the rabbits again, by the way, ready to proliferate. If we go back to that iconography, it's interesting to see that in the Renaissance, when painters were for the first time trying to figure out what the position of the intellectual could be, and a lot of paintings showing Jerome are in a way meditations on the role of the intellectual, you could argue that they're actually based on the iconography of Orpheus, that the translator, the intellectual, who receives like discursive inspiration, might be compared to Orpheus, who's similarly messing with the ontological order. Know that when we go back to the origins, not just of artistic but also of intellectual culture, we find a lot of these motifs that all gesture towards the essential meaning of being connected, of connectedness, of being connected with being in the moment when you are inspired and proliferate. I think it's beautiful that the musician and the translator would here be based on the same idea of being connected. I just had wanted to throw that in earlier. That's my friend Doreen and her dog and my guitar. And I had this totally scary experience that I was playing a song, which is actually Wild Horses, and the dog started completely freaking out. And then my friend, who's a primary school teacher, had to explain to her dog that the guitar was all right. And that was the moment when I really started thinking about this juju thing. Because suddenly you could totally realize that the dog was so upset because it simply couldn't figure out what a strange beast that guitar was. You know, it's inanimate, but it talks. How can that possibly be? And then you suddenly get struck by the very simple fact that musical instruments, and maybe we could also extend that to artworks, occupy that strange position in the ontological order. Right? They are inanimate, but they talk. How can that be? I mean, the dog was really upset, and you suddenly understand why. No? So, more research into magic and pizza. So I wanna do one last string of associations. If we assume that there is something to that thing that gets past, that thing that spreads the vibrations, that thing that messes with the ontological order, how are we going to share it? This is Lukas Dovenhöger again. That guy definitely has got his thing. And what I love about this painting is that you're totally unsure whether he's inviting you in or not letting you in, or actually not letting you out of the ice cream parlor. Yeah? Sometimes you're just held hostage by the thing. Yeah? When the thing captivates you, it maybe won't let go. Sharing the thing, I totally got into Santa Lucia, Saint Lucy, because she's not just sharing her thing, she's sharing her eyes. And what kind of stronger metaphor can we find for kind of sharing our views? If we really materialize that logic of sharing our outlook, sharing our views of the world, there's no stronger image than Saint Lucy sharing her actual eyes on the material level. A story behind it is that there was a guy who really liked Lucy and said like, confessed that he liked her and eyes particularly, And then Lucy, who was again intent on remaining a virgin, said, if you wanna have my eyes, here, have them. And she tore out her eyes and gave them to her suitor. And God looked at it and liked it and said, like, good attitude, I give you another pair of eyes. So at the end of the day, Lucy got 2 pairs of eyes. She's got her profane material eyes, and she's got her heavenly eyes. No, she's got celestial vision and material vision, and she shares those eyes. I think which is a beautiful metaphor, no, for the kind of 2 dimensions that we inhabit as we're straddling the ontological order between the intellectual and the material. It's the same pair of eyes, but twice. Once the divine and once the vernacular, heavenly ones. And I mean, these it's madness, huh? But, and yeah, okay, Lotto again, another eye. Oh, these are my favorite Lucys, where the eyes, again, like we have that moment where the thing, in the moment when it inspires, it travels all across the ontological order, right? It's human, but it's plant-like at the very same time, no? The eyes grow. And here we are again, no? What I like about this moment, maybe I should go back one, is that moment of profanation. And Agamben again writes beautifully about the profane. Agamben develops this idea of the pure profane. He says that in ancient sacrifice, when something becomes sacrificed, a certain share of the sacrificial good is returned to the community for it to consume it. And that share, which is given back and shared for the community, is not secular. It's not simply material, because it has made that journey up to the divine. It returns from the divine without becoming totally secular. It remains in that strange middle ground where it is touched by the divine, but becomes profane and it becomes something for everybody to eat. And that's the pure profane, he calls it. Something that is on that, it preserves the secret of the divine, it travels up the ontological order and returns halfway down. And this is precisely the pure profane that founds the community in the moment when it gets shared. And I have to say, I like the pure profane. And I like artists who, in a way, manage in their work to share their secret and play this game of concealing and revealing precisely on the level of the pure profane, where what is shared is divine inspiration, but in a key that doesn't make it seem like it's oh so special and rarefied. It's the pure profane. No, it's that share, the yoga pants, that you return for consumption. And that's a piece of an excerpt from a film by Danai Anesiadou, which ends with her sitting in a dentist chair in the position of the new reverse. You could compare it to Duchamp's État donné with the model holding the lamp, but she's holding a piece of fake gold in a dentist chair. And for me, that's the moment when you share the pure profane, something that glistens in the dark, but it's the profane share that you put, the thing that you pass on, like the profane eyes. This is what you get in Sicily on St. Lucia's Day. No, it's a fried rice ball that everybody gets to eat. I mean, this is how literal it gets, and this is how beautiful it gets. No, I'm thinking about the logic of sharing a divine moment. How would you want to share it? Well, profanely. You know, you want to share the eyes, have one, have a bite. No, there is a particularly form of like divinely inspired utter materialism that you see in this ritual of sharing Santa Lucia's eyes by eating fried rice balls. They're probably quite tasty. And I'm trying to say that this is maybe a cultural model that we could look at for sharing these moments of inspiration in spaces of material difference through sharing something that might be divinely inspired, totally being faithful to that divine moment of inspiration and singularity, but shared on the level of absolute profanity. You know, have a bite, have a schnapps. And one artist that I want to introduce you to, and I will end on this, is an artist that I find breathtaking because I think she totally does that, is Elena Shaposhnikov, a Polish sculptor from and she died in the 1970s. Her work is still very it's not really known, but I think it's breathtaking, because what you find in her work, these are like polyurethane, a kind of a strange polyurethane blob with these kind of casts of mouths coming out. It's basically an anus shitting forth heavenly kisses. So you have something that in a way is unashamedly divine in this kind of sharing of love, but does so in an absolutely profane key. So in a way, it is the pure profane. It is something that happens on a material level, transgresses all ontological orders. Also on the right, you have a dessert that you can eat. Like the whole structure of what goes in, what goes out. Like a mouth eats a mouse. So the entire logic of intuition, input, output, is short-circuit here, but creates this kind of strange material mass, which I would argue is a genuine medium for sharing joy in this messy key of the pure profane. That's another very impressive piece. It's called Elena's Funeral, and Shaposhnikov survived 3 concentration camps, and that is a piece that commemorates that experience. You see a lot of faces wrapped in this kind of strange mass of polyester, and on the bottom you see another blob that includes her photograph and a piece of concentration camp uniform, where you feel what is shared here is a death that everybody dies by themselves and at the same time not alone. So there's another moment of being touched that kind of messes with the ontological order, where yes, everybody dies individually, but there is a kind of a collective dying alone. In the same way that we share maybe just that moment of difference, the love for solitude as our difference, what we have here returning is that moment of sharing difference, the difference of dying alone, but sharing that difference together. Incredibly powerful piece. But what's stunning in Shaposhnikov's work is that while it articulates these deeply traumatic experiences, in the same key of the pure profane, it will articulate something like a joy that equally defies ontological difference. I mean, what is this? This kind of remembered, dismembered, banana, penis, nipple, lip thing. You know, it's one big transgression against the ontological order, but made to share in the key of the pure profane. There are wonderful multiples by Shaposhnikov, which are just like casts of mouth that look a little bit like gumdrops. That you would share the joy as you share the pain in that key of the pure profane. I don't know if it's even possible to summarize that, but if we think about inspiration as something pneumatic and kinetic that activates a relationship on a material level, as we can see here, the cat knows. The cats are usually bad witnesses. No, you can't ask the cat whether really what happened last night was real and not just fantasy. Maybe that doubt will always follow us, and we might have to inhabit that doubt, maybe in silence. No? But at the same time, there is a certain level where the material dimension of that inspiration might be brought out by straddling the ontological difference between the divine inspiration and the absolute profane realities in which we might want to share them. I feel like having rice balls. But that's it. Thank you for your patience. I realized that with my associative thinking, it's sometimes difficult to get a foot in the door, but I totally appreciate questions, criticisms, protest, or yeah. Sorry, the I don't think I have, no.
Transition, abandoned rail line, former industrial rail line that ran through
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about this space, the threshold space you're talking about, where ideas can be open or conflict without
Hmm.
I'm wondering if that's that sort of space, or maybe you can think of a modern space that you've experienced the consciousness.
Yeah, it's a good question. No, like, to what degree can those zones be created just by the logic of a place? And to a certain degree, I would be inclined to say, like, yeah, maybe that you can search those spaces which have that particular kind of energy. At the same time, I believe that my experience has always been that it's also up to people to create that kind of strange threshold space. And I'm trying to argue for it also for political reasons, because I realize that in the last years, art spaces as well as universities are more and more becoming the exact opposite of such spaces, where there's kind of protocol and red tape everywhere, and where any kind of exchange is constantly monitored by this pressure of choosing the chosen one, and that is usually like with this kind of stranglehold of performance and evaluation. Okay, you've got 2 minutes to perform, and then we'll evaluate you, and then we're done. And that happens in universities as well as, I guess, in art spaces. You know, like, I mean, you've got 2 minutes from the door to the first artwork and the gallery, and in that space you already have to deliver. And I just want to make a strong plea for, in a way, short-circuiting those ontological orders and protocols. And I don't know, my experience has always been that it's been particular people who somehow understand how to create those zones of inspiration, but in the end you can't do it alone. No, it takes stones, trees, and animals to create such a zone. But I'm totally for fighting for creating such zones, either finding them or creating them through the style with which you, I don't know, do your work and create those spaces of exchange. I mean, any any university can potentially become an academia again, even temporarily for the duration of one seminar. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I just came from there this morning, from the Rocky Mountains. I mean, that would also answer to the question, like, can there be a logic of place, these mythical spaces, like, I don't know, Black Mountain College or something, like, where you deliberately choose to put something in a place that is kind of off-center? To a certain degree, I believe in that, but I also think that each institution has kind of is kind of governed by its own particular death drive. And Kafka describes that best, no? That each institution in the end works towards shutting itself down. And right now that means, like, most educational institutions become progressively more corporate. And in the end, Banff is a great place to work, but because there's still a couple of really amazing people who have that kind of spirit of the academia, who know how to deal with the red tape and then keep a space open where these exchanges are possible. So, like, the logic of going slightly off-center, I to a certain degree believe in that, but in the end of the day I would always say it's people rather than places. And this kind of strange logic that for education to be exchange, to be inspiring exchange, to be possible in an educational institution, usually takes some people who methodically work against the demands of the institution. Because I fundamentally believe if each institution wants to shut itself down. So universities, I think, are geared towards education, making education impossible. That's what the institution wants. And I think it always takes a certain degree of resistance against that to create a store or an academia or a museum. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the range of your examples,
Mm-hmm.
and in particular the way that contemporary or recent examples
Yeah.
seem to get kind of conflated with examples from
Yeah,
Greece.
yeah.
And so I'm wondering, is there a historical dimension to this thing called inspiration, or is there something that might be different between do things change over time for you?
I have no idea. I mean, like, of course, from an art historical perspective, this is like a stupid provocation what I've just done. But I think on the level of empathy, when you suddenly find yourself empathizing with these images, they're closer to home than you think. I mean, in last year I did this lecture series in Berlin in the Free Academy, the building, which is called like Why Are Conceptual Artists Painting Again, because they think it's a good idea, haha. And I tried to kind of find a rationale for a different spirit of conceptual art. I was fundamentally trying to argue for something like a more sensual intelligence, or like a materialist, a different kind of materialism, and ended up talking about also people like Artaud, but in search for this kind of different sensual intelligence, I suddenly ended up looking at these Renaissance paintings. No, it took a lot, and realized that maybe when we go to the origins, what I would assume the origins of our current intellectual culture are, you encounter a spirit there, which is giving you a lot of answers to questions that we might currently have. And I love these Jerome paintings because they talk so much about how an intellectual spirit could be associated and connected to something deeply material, and how intuition and emotion, like Jean-Luc Nancy writes a lot about this moment of touch, where grasping and thinking is about touching and creating these moments where we affect each other through thought, and where the social intelligence of intellectual culture that is sometimes so brutally missing is actually thought through on a level that I find deeply eye-opening. So on that level, I would say like and I don't want to say like Italians do it better, but there is a lot of really good answers to very, very contemporary questions that we might find in those people, precisely because they were trying to figure out what it means to situate an intellectual artistic practice in a social environment.
But does the problem of, say, institutionalization change, like from with the original open field of the academia to like something like the opacity of institutions today, or something? I don't know. Is that a different end?
I mean, it's a good question in the end, but just to throw out some strong images to kind of summon a different kind of spirit of what this could be. But then, of course, we have these descriptions, and this is like really evil, right? You see that there's a lot of evil stuff going on in the background. And so I don't know to what degree like the current dynamics of institutionalization and the powers at play there should not rather be investigated in a contemporary and isolated way. But sometimes it's just like interesting to remind ourselves, I think, that at these origins, the spaces were contaminated. That I threw it in to say like okay, let's not project on that there is a kind of pure inspired community. Those differences and antagonisms obviously were there from the very beginning. I also that this is the court of Mantua, where I would have to confirm that, but if I remember correctly, this is sometimes credited as being like the origin of salon culture, where the lady of the house was hosting a lot of intellectual activity, and so that modern salons can be traced back obviously to Renaissance culture, and that would be one example. But I just find it very provoking that this scene, which could be celebrated as one birthplace of intellectual culture, is immediately also contaminated by politics of the most evil kind. Right, there was something in... Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a really provoking question. I mean, how abstract can you get on the level of rice balls? But I mean, like, but if we look at those intarsias, no, they are very purely profane in the way how they physically articulate the idea of creation and inspiration, like these crazy hands. No, it's, but at the same time, it is quite abstract in the way how it is codified. And when you think about it, yeah, like we know from. I mean, basically, I've been very figurative today, and there's a lot of representational action going on. But I believe when we think about the thing as that which is passed over, or which even appears in the moment when an exchange takes place, in its ceremonial character, that could be a completely abstract thing. Like the schnapps bottle could be any kind of object that is traded, through which those kinetic energies are being generated. And that could, but I always like this connection between like the abstract object and its material character, and not in the kind of, I don't know, Greenberg school of materialism being about kind of discovering some inner truth of painting, but more in a, I don't know, I'm also not an expert on Artaud and these people, but where people start looking at the ritualistic character of something abstract becoming material, and music. Then the thought gets lost. But interestingly, Agamben speaks about games a lot. That he says, one example that he gives for the pure profane is the game. He says games used to be part of religious rituals. So chess used to be played as a function of divination, so that you foretell the future. And when you then dissociate the pure profane, you still play the game religiously. So there is the divine trace in the game, but arguably it's quite an abstract thing. It's concrete and abstract, and precisely because of that, it retains the trace of the divine and brings it down to a profane level. So I mean, like there could be much more thinking that could be done into that direction. But it's I think it's in what I'm into is kind of restoring the social and emotional, the emotive, like that which moves, that which sets a group, creates a commotion, emotions that create a commotion and thereby become social. To restore that dimension to the thinking of the abstract and the material. Emotions that create a commotion and thereby become social. To restore that dimension to the thinking of the abstract and the material. Right, oh. Can I go to the back first? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Do I think about it? I mean, like in Warsaw, there was a problem with the sound because they couldn't have the sound outside. So I like the fact that I could hear the sound in the space in Berlin. But I also can't dissociate myself from all the people who were involved in the building of this museum in Warsaw, which I all sincerely like. And okay, in Warsaw, a new museum for contemporary art is going to be built, but they're in a temporary space right now, which is quite close to the central station and directly next to the kind of Stalinist Palace of Culture, which is like this towering monument of Stalinist absurdity. And then this Museum for Contemporary Art is so beautifully awkwardly situated in a temporary, I think, previous office space, but where you see traces of a particular other kind of modernism, and to just put the label museum on the outside, as you would put, I don't know, quoting Learning from Las Vegas now, like as you would put a kind of a big hot dog on a booth and then call it a hot dog stand. I think there is some of the humor of that. Oh, this is supposed to be a museum. Well, how do we know? Let's put a sign on it that says museum. Let's start this. No, there is a charm to it, which I think probably we could talk like half an evening about the local politics of Warsaw. And the manifold. I mean, I once had a conversation with the editor of Pictogram, and I asked him, like, Michal, why can't you guys just, get on with it, which is other? And then he smiled and said, Jan, you have to understand, it is Polish hell. We enjoy it. So I can't even pretend that I can get into the politics, but I can just say I'm totally convinced by the gesture of calling it kind of, using a sign that says museum in the same way how we would put a big hot dog on a hot dog booth and say, let's play museum. I think that's what the beauty of this piece is about for me. Like you can play post office, but you can also play museum. And there is like for me there's a gesture that reclaims that beginning. We don't even like the beginning of that culture where people didn't even know what it means to be in a museum, so they were trying to find out. And there is some of that strategic naivety in the piece of saying like museum. I don't know what it is. It captures, it reclaims a moment of potentiality, I think, in this rough and ready-made way of, oh, this is supposed to be a museum? Well, let's put a sign on it. I think there was one more question that oh yeah, right.
I don't think I have a question, but I really enjoyed your talk very much, and I think that it's a noble gesture to make this type of materialist argument for something that's so experiential, and to bring in the Western mystical traditions in the way that you did is absolutely hilarious. But there was this moment where it went from treating like myths and allegory materially to actually treating people who were in real social situations. And there just seemed to be this moment of transition where like Orpheus, was he really a person or was it like an allegory? And where does that transition to what the actual material discussion of these sort of sources?
Yeah, it's a crucial question. But what I'm trying to think is, it's maybe not a question of belief, but it's all a question of practice. And if we take that stuff seriously, we should investigate its practical connotations. I once had a fantastic conversation with Trisha Donnelly when she said, like, all occultism is in principle anti-materialist materialism. And I believe in that dimension. So if we break it down to that level, what are we actually getting? And there's this recent book by Agamben is amazing in this regard. It's called On Signature, where he actually talks about alchemy on that practical level. When alchemy is about materially realizing the traces of the divine in the material world. If for instance, how does it work? For instance, like a certain flower would represent, like would mirror, would be the answer, like answering to a planet, but also answering to a body part. And when you realize that, you are already part I'm not explaining that well. You are in the same way that you can't do a dry run on a magical spell, right? We know that. And in the same way, if we understand that articulating the signature, the symbol, is already putting it into effect, then we are on the level of a real material practice. And Agamben actually talks about Abi Warburg in this regard, that he says, like, Abi Warburg is rediscovering the magical dimension of these pathos formula, these pathos formula, and actually saying that the moment you find them, they're working. It's like the spell where you can't do a dry run on a pathos formula. If it's there, it's already in effect, it's producing affect. So it is this anti-materialist, materialist practice where you see it, you articulate it, you do it. It's in the establishing of the relation is deeply material. So it's not just a representation, but the thing is put into effect in the moment when it's put into the picture. These are not just pictures, they are like alchemical. This is an alchemical experiment. No, it's the moment you show it, it's put into effect. It's not a representation. It's an act. It's a performance. It's a speech act that already works. And on that level, I'm not entirely sure where this is taking us. But I think it's interesting to think about it on the practical level of art. Like, what rituals are we actually engaging in the moment when we understand sharing inspiration really as a material practice that is tied to objects, but that also generates social formations in the way how I hand it over to you, how I show you mine so that you show me yours. There is a material exchange, obviously. And I'm just trying to think if we could not, in a way, find a rationale for resistant practices on that level. Yeah, and I remember once reading like Aleister Crowley saying, like, magic is not about belief, it's about the things that get you there. But I just forgot one thing that I'm going to show you at the end, which you have to see, because it's deeply about a community of material difference that in the end, and you will see highly materially different collective emerge around an Orpheus character who gets totally sabotaged by that collective, but in the end produces a space of difference in which a thing appears.
Daylight come and me want go home. Me said them, me said them, me said them, me said them, me said them. Daylight come and me want go home.
That was beautiful.
Well, thank you very much, but I'm not finished with the song yet.
Oh, yeah, but boy, that was terrific. I bet you must have sang that song a bunch of times on TV, huh?
No, as a matter of fact, this is the very first time.
This here on the Muppet Show is the very first time you sang this?
The very first time. That's right, it's very special to me.
You bet it is, and to us too. Okay, I tell you what, we're gonna do it up really perfect. Hey, pigs, come on in. This is your pig chorus. Okay, and I'll take care of everything else. Don't worry, this is gonna be great.
Are you sure?
Trust me.
Work all night and I drink a rum. Daylight come and me wanna go home. Stack banana till the morning come. Daylight come and me wanna go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me wanna go home. Come.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, excuse me. What is a tally man?
What is what?
A tally man. You're saying tally man. What's that?
Well, he's the boss. The tally man is the guy who counts the bananas as they go into the hold of the ship. And without him, there's just no work. He's a very important man.
Ah, could I be a tally man?
Sure.
Oh, yeah? Oh, terrific. Okay, here I am, the tally man or the tally bear. Ah, okay, we got the tally bear, and now we got the boat, the chorus with the pigs and the parrot. Okay, keep singing, this is gonna be great.
Are you sure we have everything?
Sure.
How about the bananas?
The what?
Bananas. The banana boat song. We have to have bananas.
Good thinking. Got just the man. Beauregard!
Yes?
Come here. You got a job. Get bananas for this song.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. This is just gonna be great.
He's gonna get the bananas?
He's gonna get the bananas and the song's gonna be wonderful now.
Are you sure?
Trust me.
That's what you said the last time. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we wanna go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana.
Get bananas.
Daylight come and we wanna go home. Lift 6 and 7 and 8 and punch. Daylight come and we wanna go home. 6 and 7 and 8
I don't even know what
and
those are.
punch.
The bananas. They're yellow. Go pick the bananas. Keep singing.
Pisadeo. Daylight come and we wanna go home. Pisadeo. Daylight come and we wanna
Stop that.
bunch.
Pineapple.
All right,
What are you doing?
banana.
Pineapple, don't you know what bananas are? I'm sorry, sir.
I
Don't you understand what
didn't
you're
leave
doing?
black tarantula.
What?
Delight come and me one go home.
No.
I don't work with a deadly tarantula. I call my...
Wait. Alice, please. Oh, come on. Wait a minute, please. Look, don't worry about the tarantula. Don't worry about the pineapples and the onions and everything. Look, this is the first time I'm doing this on television. I really would like to get it right. I'd like it to look good for all the people. Come on,
Yeah.
won't you help me out? Let's pull together, okay?
Okay, right. Yeah.
Everybody ready, okay?
Okay.
Just watch me, okay? It'll work.
You really think it'll work?
Trust me. I live 6 and 7 and 8 and bunch.
Daylight come and me one go home. 6
And 7 and 8 and bunch.
Daylight come and me one go home.
Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana.
Daylight come and me one go home.
Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana.
Daylight come and me one go home.
Day-o,
Day-o,
day-o.
day-o.
Daylight come and we want go home.
Daylight come and me one go home.
Day. Once again, please. Day. Can we do it all together?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Here we go. All right. We said that, yeah, you.
Seven of them, I think. Say,
Daylight come and we want go home.
That banana boat's a wonderful number.
Yeah, and look what they did to it. I have a good mind to go home.
You had a good mind, you wouldn't be here in the first place.